It is 6 o'clock sharp, so I will now call the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act. There's no public meetings tonight, no open delegations, so we'll move into agenda item number 3, presentations by staff, officers, and agents of the corporation. There is one presentation this evening from the Kempenfest Board of Directors concerning the Kempenfest 2023 sponsorship report. I will now call upon Bob Stones, who's the chair, and Paul Farley, marketing and sponsorship coordinator of Kempenfest Barrie Inc., to approach the podium to provide the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Community Investment and Infrastructure Committee. We want to thank you, first of all, for the invitation to make the presentation to you this evening. Our goal is to provide you with a report on Kempenfest 2023, which I think has already been circulated, and to share with you some of our plans for Kempenfest 2024, and present some options as to how this committee and the City of Barrie might be able to help Kempenfest with both this summer's event and to ensure the event's sustainability and future longevity. I am Bob Stones, and I'm the chair of Kempenfest this year. And with me are members of our board of directors. Some of you may know them, some of you may not. Paul Markle is here. He's the vice chair, and he's a member representing the Barrie Chamber of Commerce. George Clark is here. He's our financial secretary, and he's also representing the Optimist Club. Todd Tuckey is our past chair and the Rotary representative. Ashley Grocott is a board member and represents the Barrie Art Club. And George Craig is a board member and represents the Barrie Kiwanis Club. And as chair said, Paul Fairley is here. Paul is our marketing and sponsorship coordinator. Kempenfest has been a feature of Barrie summer waterfront activities for 52 years. It's been consistently referred to as one of the largest arts, crafts, and entertainment festivals in Canada. And it's selected by Festivals and Events Ontario as one of the top 100 festival events in the province. Many in Barrie consider it to be the city's premier summer festival. And the City of Barrie has always been very generous in its support of Kempenfest. The help we receive each year from various city departments with things like logistics, planning, and servicing the event are very much appreciated, and they're integral to Kempenfest's success. And we look forward to that continued support. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Paul Fairley. I know we have 10 minutes. Paul is our coordinator of marketing and sponsorships, and he will be taking you through the PowerPoint presentation we prepared to highlight the tourism and economic impact of last summer's Kempenfest. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit about what's planned for 2024.
Good evening. I know we're pressed for time, so I'll just jump right into this here. I was part of the team that helped put a lot of the numbers together on this report. So I'll just jump through some of the fast facts of Kempenfest. Bob covered some of it, but Kempenfest has been included in FEO's top 100 Ontario festivals for the past, I think, going on 15 years now. Last year, estimated 150,000 attendees attended Kempenfest over 4 days. 300 different arts and crafts vendors, 30 antique dealers, 15 food vendors, a traveling theme park midway, a main stage, family entertainment, 4,500 capacity beer gardens, over 50 live performing artists across 2 different stages, and 410 volunteers with a collective 4,100 volunteer hours. Our survey results will generate a lot of the info on the next few slides, including tourism attendance. We recorded a 27% tourist attendance, a tourist being someone who traveled over 40 kilometers from their home to attend the event. So of the 150,000 estimated attendees, that would mean 41,000 tourists visited Barrie to attend Kempenfest that weekend. This is a little bit of information on overnight stays. 15% one night, 6% stays 2 nights, 12% suggested staying 3 nights. Of those numbers, that's obviously delegated into different categories of how they stayed, whether it was a short-term rental, being Airbnb, hotels. Hotels measured in at 12%. I think that would mean 600 rooms across the weekend. A little bit about audience demographics, an average age of 43. Interesting note, 60% nearly female, and some other sort of ethnic numbers as well. How patrons heard of the event, leading the pack, word of mouth, social media second, radio third. That sort of being a trend, social media taking on radio a little bit more and more every year. This is a little bit of this is actually just some media reach breakdown on different engagements, profiles reach, and total impressions on different platforms. Facebook still being sort of the largest with 1.3 million total impressions last year. The next slide sort of accumulates all of this with traditional media, including radio campaigns. 4 different stations generated 1.2 million impressions. Combining all the digital avenues, radio, website takeovers, and our own website, there was a total marketing impressions recorded was nearly 4 million. So some questions, just raw data we collected about what they like most, what they like least. What was most popular seems to be music, crafts, beer, no surprise. What do you like least about the event? Parking continues to be an issue for Camping Fest. This is, I guess, part of the reason we want to grow better, not necessarily bigger. And there's some other. Oh, there we go. Audience approval. Audience rating of the festival from 1 to 10, ask them how their experience was from 1 to 10. An average response of 8.9. It's pretty good. Question, will you attend the event again? 98.7% of respondents said yes. I'll break down the daily attendance. Average patron reportedly attended the event 1.63 days. These, the main graph there, it just shows the different days of which they 19% claimed to come on Friday, Saturday being the busiest day, and the Sunday for the long weekend going into the Monday was also nearly as big as the Saturday. Just some patron group sizes, what percentage of people traveled and what sizes of groups. We get into a bit of the economic impact of this, and economic impact being primarily data from the visitors themselves, actual tourists, which is what you see in the middle there. The average reported tourist attendee had a per head expenditure recorded through surveys of $245 per person. This is per visitor, tourist attendee. And multiplying that 245 by the 41,000 tourist attendees gives a rough estimate gross economic impact of just over $10 million. Again, the tourist being someone who traveled 40 kilometers or more to attend the event. And that summarizes the sponsorship report as it exists.
Thanks, Paul. So my job is to wrap it up. Like many other businesses, festivals, and events, Camping Fest is still struggling with the combined impact of COVID and the loss of revenue for the event for 2 years. Our goal with Camping Fest, as we expressed to some of you last summer, is to make the event better, not bigger. We recognize there's a footprint down at the waterfront. We can't really get any bigger than what we are. And the goal is to make the event better for the people that come to it, not bigger. That was the goal when we began our planning for this summer's event, 2024, but it's been a struggle. With that goal in mind, we've been able to produce a balanced financial forecast or balanced budget for 2024 that was passed at our recent January meeting. However, to do that, we had to consider ways to generate additional revenues and also to make some significant cuts. These cuts are what we consider to be the infrastructure required to run the event. The reason for targeting these is that they are currently a cost item and they do not represent an opportunity for us to generate any revenue from them. So presently, in order to achieve our balanced financial forecast, we've had to eliminate shuttle bus service, which was $14,000. We've had to eliminate the second stage or the family stage, which featured local talent and was free to the public, but it's a cost of at least $10,000. We've had to reduce the number of hospitality tents and seating in those. These were tents that were placed throughout the event to provide shelter for the public from the weather. We are looking at reducing the number of washrooms, and we're finding ways to reduce the waste disposal cost. All of these combined are in the neighborhood of $50,000. That's what we've had to consider cutting in order to balance our budget. So this, of course, brings us the reason for our presentation to the committee today. We're here to ask that you consider two ways that the city could continue to support this event. One is for some level of funding or grant from the municipal accommodations tax. As we know, the purpose of this tax is to fund tourism and other municipal initiatives. We're also aware that how revenue from the MAT tax is spent is up to the discretion of the municipality. So as an estimate, $50,000 in funding from the MAT tax would relieve most of the budgetary pressure we're facing and would allow us to put in most of the cuts that I just outlined back into the event and still maintain a balanced budget. And the second request we have is that we open a dialogue with the city to consider assisting Kempenfest to hire a researcher to do a comprehensive analysis of Kempenfest 2024 by gathering data at this summer's event. The data and metrics could then be used to assist the board and the city in getting a more accurate analysis of the true size and impact of Kempenfest on the local economy and local tourism that weekend. This information could then be used by both the city and our board with planning for future events and help us to determine how to better manage our investment in the event. So in conclusion, Kempenfest has been referred to as Barrie's premier summer waterfront event. As mentioned, it's been selected as one of the Festival in Ontario's top 100 events, I believe, for the last 15 years. Kempenfest has always benefited from the strong support it's received from the City of Barrie. And it's our hope that we can continue to count on that support and to work with the city going forward to ensure the long-term sustainability and success of the event and the benefits it brings to the City of Barrie. So I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. I would welcome your suggestions, and I would welcome your direction on where we go from here with possible next steps in our requests. Thank you.
Thanks to you both for for the presentation, and I have to agree. I think Kempenfest is the city's signature event, and I think it has put the city on the map. I see a number of hands up, so I'm going to go to committee members first. Are there any questions from members of committee? Are you?
First Deputy Mayor, I can. My question is, what's the current support that's given prior to the $50,000 request? Is there support coming from the city for Kempenfest at the moment?
Through Chair Hamilton to Mayor Nuttall, the city does provide a number of supports for Kempenfest, and that includes direct staff support, site services coordination, administrative support, as well as a number of departments, including transit and others who provide support to Kempenfest. I think the current estimate of the value of that specific support that is beyond what is provided to other events is around $21,000 to $22,000. That's in recognition of the importance of this event to the community and many of our local charities.
May I follow up?
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. McAlpine, a question at large obviously goes to you. So I'm going to do another question at large. Do we reimburse ourselves from the MAT for those dollars?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. No, at this point, I don't believe there's any reimbursement from the MAT for those particular costs.
Okay. The second stage, is it, I was at the main stage. I'm not sure if I was at, maybe I was at the second stage. If there's an ability to buy a beverage there, I might have been at it. But it's a secondary stage that you actually put up. It's not Meridian Place.
Yeah, I think you were at the second beer garden, the Oasis last.
I think I made it to the first beer garden too.
Yeah.
So,
so that's not the second stage, but the second stage is down towards the midway, and it's second stage or family stage. Paul?
Yeah, it's a whole like it's its own separate production, and there's a stage that rolls in, a mobile stage. It opens much like the main stage, just a smaller version.
So my question would be, how much does that stage cost?
That stage to rent for a weekend?
Yeah,
With delivery, about 5,000. Just the stage, undressed, without audio or
it's
visual.
$5,000.
Yeah, 5,000 just for the stage. Yeah.
Is there an opportunity to perhaps use Meridian Place as that second stage? Because it's sitting there, it's a band shelter, it's a stage, it's got built-in seating, audio, like it's begging to be programmed. that
This
a
was like
opportunity?
a separate conversation, potentially using that as a third, maybe down the road. There's also, and this is like maybe a longer conversation, but there's insurance issues with utilizing that stage in the festivals, where the insurance companies will not cover festivals that have stages without the walls. For whatever reasons in their metrics, that's how they need it to be. And so if one of your stages does not, they won't even insure your main stages. So by including that stage might preclude us from the proper coverage we may need. And this is like there may be ways around it, but that's just at the face of it. That's what we've been presented with.
That's fair.
And that
Um,
is one of the things that we have talked about is using Meridian Place as a possibility, but we would have to overcome these obstacles. And the other thing about the second stage or the family stages, as I said, it's all local talent. It's an opportunity to highlight that. So.
The request, I think, is twofold, as I heard. One is if the city is interested in being a partner on $50,000. And the second piece of that request was to, I mean, started with the words open dialogue, but essentially to work with the city to hire somebody to do I guess an audit of the impact on the community, as well as any opportunities that exist for Kempenfest to monetize things going forward, and to maybe even cut costs going forward where they could be out of line. Is that
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. I was told that if we had a study like that, we could look at our pricing, for instance, for vendors and things like that. And then we'd have metrics to compare it to other events to see if we're over or under what they're being charged at other venues. And there would be a lot of useful information that would help us even with applying for other sources of funding, because it seems to go by your accurate data on the number of people you have attending the event.
one final, either Tourism Ontario or Tourism Barrie, have you been in contact with either of those organizations to see if they have either grants through Tourism Ontario that Tourism Barrie can help us get, access to? They'll know what it is or where it is. Or directly through Tourism Ontario. Has there been any look into that from your board standpoint?
I have had discussions as a chair with Tourism Barrie as recently as this afternoon. So
Okay.
yes.
And what was the general response from Tourism Barrie on that?
That they would like to work with us, and it was actually one of their suggestions that if we had this type of research, it would solidify the data that we already have and would position us better to move forward in the future. And again, if we had that type of data, then that would help us to do our long-term planning for the next several years, because one of the things we haven't discussed here is we are in the process of reviewing our financial model. So.
Okay, thank you.
I'll throw it over to the next in line, but just picking up on that last question that Mayor Nuttall asked, has that type of review been done in the past at all with an external audit type thing, or when was the last time that anything like that has been done?
I've been on the board for 3 years, but I'm going to defer to one of the.
Done an economic impact study for the last 2 years, which is a very large study.
But not the same as the one we're asking for. Or...
No, we're asking for some just additional help, specifically to address some of the concerns that, confirming attendances. We just don't have the staffing. We're volunteer work. We do the best we can, but the cost is cost prohibitive as well. So this would certainly help.
And just in talking with Tourism Barrie, I mean, they pointed out some of the technical things that could be used to get more accurate data. They talked about using drones to capture the audience, and then count the number of people. And then Paul just yesterday told me that there's a way to use Bluetooth to identify the number of phones. So you'd have a more accurate count, because we don't have, as Paul said, the staff or the money to have somebody sitting there with a clicker counting how many people are coming and going. Sorry.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. Through you to staff, do we provide, Miss Reed, I guess it would be, do we provide any transit? Like they were saying they were cutting the shuttles and one of their concerns was parking. So do we provide any assistance with that?
Through your Chair Hamilton to Deputy Mayor Thompson. Yes, we do. And I'd ask Brent Forsyth to speak to that because we have given a discount on parking and provide transit shuttle.
To Deputy Mayor Thompson. On the transit side, yes, we do work with Kempenfest and we provide a transit shuttle, which they fully fund. And that's provided the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, at varying levels, Saturday and Sunday being the busiest days. In previous years, I think last year we were a little over 6,000 trips we provided. And it's free service, but again, because it's a shuttle service that Kempenfest pays for, it allows the individuals to take that shuttle to get to and from to hopefully alleviate the issue on parking, which is obviously another concern. And then on the parking side, there is a discounted rate provided to the vendors for parking during the weekend. And that, I think the discount for just that piece of it is included, I believe, in Ms. McAlpine's numbers. But that piece of the parking was about 5,000.
And what is the cost to the organization for the shuttle service?
It is essentially zero cost to the city because Kempenfest pays for it.
No, to the, not.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, to
I apologize.
Kempenfest. I think last year it was 13,000 plus tax. I want to say it was around 15.
That's right.
I can get you these, yeah.
I'll follow. On one of your slides, you had 11.9% that stay in hotels, Airbnbs and stuff. And you used the number 600 rooms. Was that 600 rooms for the weekend booked? Or was that?
Based on the if it was the one number.
If you could just use the mic, just for
Yeah.
people at home, just.
With the one metric, I think it was the one night stay was 5,400. If you, it was the 12% on that one night. I was just doing it as an example for the ones, would be 600 rooms.
No, so how many rooms would you say are booked for the whole weekend? I'm just trying to figure out a number. if you
I'd
don't-
have to run that, that slide could actually use another
Yeah.
little icon showing the different, but it would be 612. You're probably close to 1,500 rooms for the weekend. Room night, those are like individual nights, but yes.
So and the average cost of a room around that time would be between 150 and 200.
At least.
So that would probably work out to about 75 to $8,000 in mat funding that after the separate, it would be about 16, but
See the numbers
Tourist
again.
Ferry gets half.
Right.
So that would be a possibility of about, let's say, 7,000 to 8,000 that you're actually generating, with the mat funding. And you said parking. Now, do you mean parking in around the actual event or something like a facility like the Paul Sadlin Center where it would then we could, provide a shuttle, or does that not work? Like for the patrons more than the.
A few years back.
Use the mic. Come down if you don't mind. Sorry. It's like I said, we can hear you in the chamber. Just the people at home will be cursing and swearing at us.
A few years ago under the previous mayor, they went into cost recovery with a lot of the departments and they implemented a charge for us for the use of the parking lots downtown. So anything on Lakeshore. So we utilize the parking lots for things like the Midway and other, some of the vendors, some of the antiques and things. And so what they do is they charge us a fee as if the city was utilizing them for the weekend and charging people to come downtown and pay for those parking spaces. So we actually receive an invoice for the parking lots for the weekend.
So I have one other question and then probably just a comment. Is this working in conjunction with the BIA on maybe I know the BIA is really working hard with the open air Dunlop having a programming event when they do that open air Dunlop. And, to Mayor Nuttall's point with the Meridian, if we could maybe incorporate, which would help maybe with some of the financial restraints that you guys are having, that is good for everybody. The more people we can get downtown for whatever reason is great for our city. So I was wondering if there had been any collaboration with them or even just some conversation.
So I'm going to answer it first, and then I'm going to turn it over to probably Paul. So we want to work with everybody. That's why we've reached out to Tourism Barrie and they're actually advisors to the board, but we would like to work more closely with anybody that's interested in supporting the event. And one of the groups that we have talked about internally on our board is the BIA, and how can we reach out to them, or are they interested even in being more involved in Kempenfest? But Paul has more information on that.
Good evening. So I've had direct conversations with Steve Rakalis on, even the conversation about moving the main stage to Meridian, which isn't something that's necessarily feasible, but there are opportunities for us to do programming on the shoulders of the event, promoting Kempenfest and to engage the downtown. We want to make sure that this is a citywide event. In terms of shuttles and where we move people around in the city, the shuttles pick up at several different places. Southland Center parking areas were one. Bayfield Mall parking lot was another one. So we do drop cars off there to obviously relieve congestion, but it does create opportunities for economic spends in those particular areas as well. And again, the shuttle service moving around within the downtown core to move people after the event, as it shuts down at 10 and running a little later, provides an opportunity to get people back into the downtown core. But we're open to any opportunity to work with the BIA. I've had conversations with Craig Nixon. I have a problem with Nixon today. With Craig at the BIA with regards to working with him more closely. Thanks.
Paul, you should have just went with Craig Nixon. He is the ward counselor down there. So you could have just slid that one in and
Yeah, I get the right Nixon when I'm dealing with that. Yeah.
So you actually, another question. How much would the not audit, I don't want to say audit, but like study, do you have a cost to that, or did I just miss it?
We don't have a cost for that yet. One of the things I mentioned in my conclusion is we would like to get recommendations from you about how to proceed with the city. And if we could work with the city to get an estimate or find a resource that could do that for us, then that would be the route that we would prefer to go. We probably couldn't handle the cost of it alone. We did reach out to one group that we had used in the past, and just to ballpark it, the cost was going to be over $20,000 basically for 5 days around that weekend to come down and have people count the number of people there and then to produce a report. And we just don't have that money in the budget.
So this will be my comment. I actually think this is extremely important to the city for a lot of different reasons. And, it started off as a local like trading and arts, and it still has that component to it, where there's a lot of artists and a lot of people making things and stuff that would never have an opportunity to be exposed to this level. And I never thought I would ever sit on council and speak of public art and art in general the way I do today. But I realize how important it is and how good it is for our community. And, I thought the talent this year was excellent. Tom Cochran was a great show. It was great. It gives us a lot of exposures for a lot of different reasons. And I think council being on stage was a real high level too, but that's maybe self-serving. But yeah, I think this is a really important thing, and maybe you should reach out to CAO Prowse, and through our staff, we've got some, great minds around the table that can maybe assist in directing you for that study to help us, make sure that this is something that sticks around for a long time. So
Thank you.
Any other members of committee? Councillor Reitma?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a couple of questions. You said that you were coming out of COVID, and that was one of the reasons for your shortfall. Before COVID, were you in a balanced kind of budget situation, or do you know?
No, we weren't. To be honest, there was 1 year when we had to get loans from some of the clubs to cover the deficit for that year. Since COVID in 2022, I think was the first year out of it, we were successful, like many other festivals and events, in getting significant government grants, which the provincial government particularly was using to encourage businesses and events to get back on their feet. In 2023, those grants basically dried up. The figure that I heard, they had $52 million in grants, and I think it was over 600 groups that had applied for them. So we didn't get any grants. And I did mention that one of the things we're looking at is our financial model. Our goal moving forward is to be self-sufficient and not have to apply for funding and not have to come to city council to ask for money. But we're not there yet.
Let me say that, I mean, it is a terrific weekend that you put on, and yeah, the city benefits, and all kinds of people throughout the city benefit greatly from it. So I'm sure that everyone around this table is very supportive and would like to see you develop a model that does make you self-sustaining. And I guess I have a question for Ms. Schlichter maybe, and that is, you've heard the request in terms of support for a research person to do some work on this. Is that something that your office could take on or at least coordinate?
Thank you so much. Through you, Chair Hamilton, to Councillor Riepma. The timing is very interesting. We've been having some great conversation with our partners at Tourism Barrie and Rec and Culture from the special events team, talking specifically about events and how do we look at how we measure impact, how we look at tourism, how we measure audience and all of those pieces. So it is very much a live and active discussion. We did pilot something for New Year's Eve. I'm not quite ready to share it, so I'll keep it there. But I think it would be reasonable for us to continue and engage that dialogue and extend it through to Kempenfest. I don't have a full defined what that would be, but it is very much a live and active conversation for us. So we would be very open to that with Kempenfest.
Madam Chairman, I don't know where to take that, except that, you now have an introduction, and maybe that's something that you could just take away and work on. And I do think that the MAT tax idea is an interesting one. The difficulty that we have is that while this is a really great economic driver for a weekend here in Barrie, the city itself, we don't collect any revenue. In fact, we support it in various ways, but we don't get an income tax or a HST tax or anything like that from it. So that kind of leaves us, with no income out of it. But I do think the MAT tax is something that we do benefit from, and we could, I think we should look at it for sure.
Thank you. I know we got a few questions from members not on committee, so I'm just going to jump in really quick as well. I mean, I look at this, at the economic impact and the spinoff that Kempenfest generates, and to me, this is a no-brainer. I mean, $50,000. I don't have the $50,000, but I think the conversation today is really looking at how do we find this and how do we support this? Because I think as a city, we'd be crazy to take away things like the shuttle service, additional washrooms, an event that is creating this much economic gain. So to me, I think this is the beginning of a conversation, and I would like to continue with Tourism Barrie and with Ms. Schlichter's team to really look at how we can support you in this endeavor. A couple of things, I'll pick up on Councillor or Deputy Mayor Thompson's comments too about exploring a partnership with BIA. One of the things I have heard, I know from downtown businesses, is that Kempenfest really doesn't help them. In fact, it sort of deters people. And so activating Meridian Place and activating the downtown core, I think would be, a benefit for all going forward. So looking at opportunities and ways to do that. And again, if it replaces the second stage, knowing insurance and liability, but I think that is something, whether it becomes a third stage, again, the local talent to an opportunity to include them, I think is really, really vital. So that is something I would like to see. Other things I just picked up in your presentation, where they're staying, it says 58.5% other. Where's the other? I know at the Chamber of Commerce today, we talked about the lack of hotels in the city, and I wonder where are people staying?
Yeah, well, you see that the pie graph on that same chart, it shows you the questions we're asking. And this is 2 years in a row where why is other so big? So
Yeah,
that's something we still like. We've added camping. The other option of people coming up here could be cottages. There's another question to ask. I just can't see 60% of them are coming up as cottagers. So
yeah.
Other needs to be, if the response is other, I think the raw data should be, well,
Yeah.
where are you staying? Are you-
Okay,
you-
so something maybe we can collect
yeah.
further, because that's,
Good
you know, good intel for us as a city too. If we're trying to improve tourism and we don't have opportunities or options for people to actually stay here, it's not really helping our efforts from a tourism perspective. The other thing I picked up on was just the demographics and looking at, you know, 87% Caucasian. I'd love to see as we start embracing the principles of, you know, equity, diversity, inclusion, and culture flair, maybe how we can improve upon that and start to see more ethnically diverse cultures and folks coming in attendance as well. So just another area I think we can
Yeah, it's
probably,
been- we've had deep conversations about that too, mostly with programming, cultural programming.
wonderful.
Yeah, we've already started to address that. And it's exactly what you said. If we could do that on the family stage to start, maybe a night or 2 nights or throughout the weekend. So that's an area that we are definitely looking at already. But again, it's funding and
Yeah.
and the other thing is, I mean, we don't have staff, so this is it. So, you know, we're all volunteers. We have big
Yeah.
dreams, but
Well, I
That's good.
think what you do is incredible, and putting some numbers to it, I think really actually demonstrates the importance that this event has to the city as a whole. So for me, I'd love to see us work together and find some ways to move forward. I mean, for us to be charging for parking lots and shuttle service, it just, I'm not sure. There has to be some ways that we can come together and find the funding required. But to Councillor Reitman's point, I do think, you know, going forward and finding a sustainable model so that we're not coming back to city year over year is also something we're going to have to figure out. And perhaps that's where the research here comes in. But certainly for this year, I would hate to see any cutbacks because of, you know, the things that you're putting forward here, I think would have a significant impact. Right now, we've got 98 people wanting to return. Well, if there's no, you know, washrooms or shuttle service, you know, that can impact, and it would impact the economic benefits as well. So I will turn it over to non-committee members. I think Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. I do have a series of questions, but they're really framed to kind of maybe suggest different connections or options that I'm thinking about as I'm hearing the conversation. And I can't help but think about Mariposa and the festival there. And I'm not sure if you've reached out to them because on some of the areas you identified costs, especially waste diversion. I've got a couple of suggestions if you haven't reached out. I believe, if I'm correct, a couple years back, they saw a huge waste diversion, but also I think there were some learnings by that committee about where their waste went. It didn't stay local, it was transported out. So I didn't know if the waste costs are specific to City of Barrie landfill or are they actually taken out of region? And I'm not sure if that's a better question for staff, unless you had that at hand. But are the waste costs coming from a billing from City of Barrie landfill? There. And so thoughts on that where I'm not sure if the vendors have a particular protocol. Mariposa went through 2, I thought, which were very environmentally friendly, but very innovative pieces. They leveraged their volunteers to be garbage kind of ambassadors. So they're not touching people's garbage, but they're at the stations, helping to make sure people are actually not ruining appropriate recycling. And you've got an amazing number of volunteer hours. I'm hoping they're leveraged in that way because if you've got waste is waste, recycling is recycling, and otherwise you're not paying maybe a larger waste bill. I'm not sure if that's been looked at to date.
yeah, I was gonna mention that. We are looking at, is it Living Green?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the nonprofit organization Living Green has been in touch with us. They're looking to work with us to help mitigate some of that. Obviously, we want to work with the City of Barrie as well to help reduce waste. That's one of the things that we are actually going to be investigating this year.
That's great. So wonderful. But on that too, if that's framing, it looks like it's working really, really well around having volunteers at the waste stations and doing that diversion. And also, I believe Mariposa looked at making sure all vendors were using the same material. So especially from our circular economy, but also whether it's wooden utensils or otherwise, kind of are aligning to that or not just coming in. It might cost them a little bit more, which might kind of be felt on their prices, but it was either compostable utensils or otherwise, but that was looked at and there could be some learnings from Mariposa if you haven't talked to that group. My other comment, I'm a huge fan of Camping Fest. So for me, I'm trying not to have a significant reaction to some of the things like washrooms and second stage. I mean, second stage is a gorgeous place where families gravitate to. And I've always seen that to be where you see the vibrancy of our ethnic diversity. And so I would really encourage you to protect that or activate that at Meridian Square through a BAA or separate the event so it's a non-insurance issue. But I know like our different businesses like Barrie School of Music, activate that space. I think EMA, the Ethnic Mosaic Alliance, and that's another great stakeholder to connect with. But would kind of say, yeah, really do hope we're not removing this, but can find funding in other ways. I'm not sure if you considered kind of a hop on, hop off fee or a bracelet like they use at Burroughs Creek for kind of a weekend on admission. But if I'm not hearing that you're charging anything for the shuttles, but maybe something is better than nothing as a full sunk cost. Yeah.
We have discussed that. There's a cost to that too. But yes, we are investigating that, maybe a tap system or something like that make it voluntary, because we don't charge for admission, right? It's free. So we started putting in charges.
Okay.
But we have talked about possibly a tap system for voluntary donations for the shuttles.
That's great.
But now we don't have shuttles.
Yeah. My other question is, have you looked at, or if it's not feasible, would it be in the future as kind of a growing shift, but people bringing their bikes and having a bike rack station? So considering 40 kilometers, if I was going to take the bus, or even within 20 or 15 kilometers, part of the ride being, also kind of being that partner with the city around adopting bus and bus routes, awareness and knowledge of that, but also then how to rack your bike on a bus and come on in. But if you've got a bike station, could you actually look at, when you're considering investment in a review, not just an audit of current state, but what are green metrics? So if I think about the spotlight Kempenfest has on it, around being a destination of choice, being a great venue, how can you elevate that much more by saying we're also a green event? And what are some of the metrics that just lend themselves to your event based on how you're already running programming, and that might attract other people or give you kind of a different spotlight on the event? So from a supporting active transportation or cyclists coming and having a place they can drop it off, get a ticket and know it's safe, could be where if you have to cut, or in general, if people just prefer not to be in the congestion, because I got to tell you, I do kind of aim about like, where am I parking? How am I going to walk down? If I'm purchasing a piece of antique material, how am I getting in there? So people go in to really enjoy the shopping and all the other events. But that could be an area, if you haven't explored it, around how you cater to different modalities of getting into Kempenfest. Maybe the last other one really was, I think, tying back to when you're doing the audit. So how do you support kind of strategies of the city in that? So our circular economy, I think, tied to the waste diversion, but then also the environmental impact. So we know, especially the activation around Lake Simcoe, what are areas in which some of the approaches you can take to how we activate that space also lend to being a green or green friendly or environmentally friendly. And I think it could, I'm not sure what's out there, but it might lend to opening up different grants, or at least a promotion and advertising and marketing about the type of space that you're facilitating. So I think it's pretty cool what you are able to do within that weekend. My last maybe comment is, I'm not sure if our sport and recreation grant would ever be applicable, but maybe it's worth a conversation. It might not at face value, but if there's ever a component within what you're activating.
Sorry, what grant?
The City of Barrie has a sport and rec grant. I'm not sure if it would apply, or if there's something that you're planning to activate that ties into a particular program or a particular event or a particular new idea, if that's ever a pocket of funding that makes sense. It may not, but it might be worth a look if you haven't looked at it. Those are all my comments.
Shit, I've taken notes, so.
Thank you. And Councillor Cursor.
Okay, through you, Chair Hamilton, to just a couple of questions I have specifically. I'm not sure who I would be directing this to, so I will just roll the dice with Ms. McAlpine. Has insurance issues with Meridian Place have been brought up before? Is there any knowledge of staff on these things, or mitigating those problems if there are, have been identified?
Through Chair Hamilton to Councillor Courser, I'm not aware of it being raised in the past. It may have been to our special events team, and Ashley Chappell is here. However, it's not something that I'm aware has been raised by organizations to date.
Okay. Okay, it'd be good to look into that, because if it's stopping other organizations from taking that space, that would be good to know. Good to know. Also, through you, Chair Hamilton, to, I guess it would be Miss Slichter. I know that we're doing a cultural plan study this year. And I'm wondering if cultural events such as Kempenfest are going to be studied within that report when it comes forward.
Through you, Chair Hamilton, to Councillor Corser. The arts and culture update is focused more on artistic and the arts sector development, which is more within the scope of economic and creative. A full event strategy wouldn't be part of the scope. However, we do expect that the consultant will look overall at things that are happening in the community that support driving arts and culture development. So I think there will be some touch on it, but it would not be an in-depth analysis.
That's interesting, because there's such a high component of arts in Kempenfest that it's, but is it being separate as a separate event as opposed to a city the kind of held event within I guess within our own arts and culture? Then I guess it wouldn't be part of that, but it would be something I'd like to see if we could look at.
Sure, through you, Chair Hamilton, to Councillor Corser. Certainly, is it identified as an asset that supports the development of the arts as it relates to Huronia Arts and Crafts and some of those localized artisans that we're looking to support development of, and artists from a local perspective? It will look at it from that lens, but it won't do, the intent and the scope is not to assess the value, business case, scope of the event in that lens, if that provides a better context for you.
Okay, yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Is that it, Councilor President? Okay, and then Councilor Nixon.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Hamilton. Yeah, I, like many people, I think everyone around the table would love to see Kempenfest kind of expand a little further around the bay into the downtown area. Before I get into that, I just want to thank you all, you and your committee, for just an incredible job you did last year and all the years past. So we're certainly not trying to reinvent the wheel. And further to Councillor Corser's comments about the insurance at Meridian, I'm just a little confused because, you know, there's events there, multiple events throughout the summer where we have bands there. And I don't know whether the insurance company you're talking to knows that the Meridian stage it's really what, like 1.5 feet off the ground, as opposed to, you know, 8-10 feet off the ground, like a normal stage for that type of event. Just curious, would you know if they're aware of that?
This is, it's not for liability insurance, it's for like comprehensive event cancellation insurance. Like you can add on different riders, whether it be artist non-appearance, high winds, lightning, these kinds of things, where your event's canceled and then you get insurance policies that cover your expenses. So those particular policies want to see stages with 3 walls. Like it's just a rule. It's that I've crossed this bridge many times with different municipalities and different stages. And
yeah,
the SLs, those mobile ones that we were talking about earlier, the SL stages, stage lines, those ones, the insurance companies like those ones. They're low, they're heavy, they don't turn into kites, even though they have the 3 balls. And there's something with the 3 balls. I haven't been given the actual reason of why the 3 balls.
Yeah,
but it's like one of the rules for those policies.
Yeah, my first thought would be, you know, someone on stage falling off and getting hurt, but you know, this Meridian stage, as I say, is not very high. So I'm curious how the BIA manages to do it without maybe.
Well, they probably do, but they may not be getting those policies of the event cancellation.
Yeah,
where they're not insuring their expenses. Or maybe they're not applying for the artist non-appearance where the band doesn't show up and what costs are incurred because of that. So those
Yeah.
are the things those policies cover.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification. And again, whether that stage is used for that purpose or not, it would be wonderful to see it expand a little further, take advantage of some more waterfront that weekend. And it also spreads out the parking a little further, which might alleviate some other issues, but okay, thank you.
And I think Mayor Nettle, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, it's been brought to my attention, if we don't have any action out of tonight's meeting, then all it's happening is it's received. And so if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, I think it's time for a motion. We're kind of getting to the end of the hour we have set aside. Is that okay with you at this point? Would you
That's
entertain it?
exactly what I wanted to do.
Beautiful. So I think at this point, I don't have anything written out, so I'm just gonna ask the deputy clerk and clerk to help me out on this. I'd like to see staff in the city of Barrie work with the board and organizers of Fest alongside Tourism Barrie on both the costs that have been outlined. I think it's roughly $50,000 is the number. And more importantly, the study into what can be done in future years to improve the financial situation and the general, quite frankly, the general reception of individuals who are visiting. Because if there's things that we can do better, we might as well find out what they are, and then report back to us on where staff advise that we should intercede, where we shouldn't intercede, and the costs associated with the study going forward.
Did you capture all that? Do I need to recite that back? Or are we just putting that motion on the? Are there any questions around the table to the motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hamilton. Obviously, I'm not a member of the committee, but I do sit on Tourism Barrie, so I've been actively messaging back and forth, and I did have quite a lengthy conversation this afternoon with our ED on this. And Mayor Nuttall's amendment is spot on with the first step that needs to be done, because until you have accurate data, you really don't know what the economic impacts are. There is a STEAM report that does exist. However, it's using data that's probably not very accurate. So you really can't put too much money on the economic impact as we see it in this slideshow at this point. So there you can use drones that have heat sinks on them that will then map out and count the number of warm bodies it senses. Because obviously when you're not in a contained area, it's kind of hard you'd have to fence that whole area to try and get a proper head count. So this will definitely be the first step to actually get true numbers to see what the economic impact is. And then also too, it'll be able to measure where it fits into the hotelier stays and other pieces. So it's definitely spot on to the first step that needs to be done.
Any other questions from members of the committee as to the motion as presented? Go to vote. All those in favor? All those opposed, and it carries. Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation and conversation tonight. I look forward to a future update as to where the conversation unfolds in the collaboration with Tourism Barrie and BIA. But thank you. I think us having a backstage pass literally and a backstage insight as to what goes into the development of Campus Fest has really been eye-opening for me. There's a ton of work. So kudos to you and your team year over year for taking this on. It's much appreciated by the city.
Thank you. And I just would like to again state that we really appreciate the support that we have received from the city, and it's particularly from city staff. I know the countless hours that they've spent, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you.
There you go. Thank you to staff. Okay, so we will move on, just given the time here, to agenda item number 4. There are no standing items. There are no referred items this evening. So moving into the advisory committee reports. There's one advisory committee report to be received. Item 6.1, the report of the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee dated December 7th, 2023. Can I have a member of committee place that report on the floor to be received? Councillor Rietma. Are there any questions for members of the committee? Members of council? All in favor? And it carries. Moving into agenda item number 7, report of officers of the corporation. 7.1, the Barrie Allendale Transit Terminal Public Art Commission, that the artwork Exhale by Studio F- as shown in Appendix A to the report to the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee dated January 24th, 2024, concerning the Barrie Allendale Transit Terminal Public Art Commission, for the Public Art Commission to be approved as the selected artwork for the proposed Barrie Allendale Transit Terminal. That the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute agreements relevant to the installation satisfactory to the Director of Legal Services, the Director of Economic and Creative Development, and the Director of Corporate Facilities. Does a member of committee wish to put this recommendation on the floor? Deputy Mayor Thompson. As the motion is on the floor, are there any questions from members of the committee? Question? Deputy Mayor Council, go ahead. Deputy Mayor Thompson, go ahead.
Thanks. It's more of a comment. This has been a little bit of a long process in the Barrie Public Art Committee. We've got some great volunteers that looked at lots of different things. And if you read the report and stuff, you'll see, but it's really going to be a highlight to the Allendale. And it's nice. Like I said, the public art, what it draws people to and starts the conversation, it's really important. So it's exciting, and it's nice to see that we're moving in the right direction here.
Totally agree. It's nice to see the selection's been made. Are there any other questions or comments from members of committee? Oh, sorry, members of committee, Councillor Rima.
I just wanted to echo that comment. I think that the design is amazing, and I'm just kind of jealous. I'd love to be able to be that creative, but I'm not. But it's definitely I think is going to really add to that building and to that area. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Great. And Councillor Kungle, follow-up question or comment?
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. Just a follow-up comment as added context. Had the opportunity to speak with Caroline Ryan today because a question that was coming up, while beautiful, is whether or not as a bird-friendly city, this would be something that attracted or detracted bird strikes. And so it was great information she was able to provide as it is felt to actually detract from bird strikes. So I thought I would share that in case there's any questions that residents get, but I did appreciate that context and conversation that the committee had in the selection process.
Wonderful. Not something I would ever have thought of. So excellent to raise it in case it does come up, and thank you for that insight. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, and it carries. Moving on to item for discussion, there are none on tonight's agenda, so we will move into adjournment. This concludes the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee meeting at 6:57, and the General Committee meeting will begin in 3 minutes at 7 p.m. The meeting is adjourned.